Let's talk a little bit about how to draw on your computer. And I don't mean take a marker and start drawing on your computer, but to how to use apps that are available on different platforms. And there are quite a few out there. There are a few that I think kind of float to the top as far as their capabilities and what we might find useful. One is Morpholio. Look at all these people that recommend Morpholio. Very architectural, a lot of really interesting features that these all share. Most of these applications can use or do use a stylus. They allow you to draw using guides. They have layers that you can turn on and off, and they have different styles of pen. So this one you can see some are more sketchy, and some are less sketchy, and you can fill in areas of your drawings. Another one is called Concepts. I think this is probably a little more stylistic. This is also a nice one if you are really good at Adobe Illustrator. You can export the file format that this one produces to Illustrator as a vector, which is awfully nice. We'll learn more about vectors when we talk about Illustrator. Those of you that have laptops that are the style laptops that are tablets that can use a stylus either on their own or and in addition, touchscreen type of apps, you might look at one of these web-based editors. The one that I think is the best is Pixlr Editor, Pixlr. And this one you can draw. I'm just using my mouse here. I don't have a stylus handy. Because I'm just drawing on my desktop. But this is one that is awfully nice, and it has a number of different types of line options, and it's very artistic. But you can also import photos. Again, most of these allow you to do that. But this one you're on a more powerful machine than, say, just your phone. And actually, if you are using a Mac and you want to use something like Pixlr Editor, you can use a special product called Inklet, which allows you to use your touchpad as a drawing device with a not an Apple Pen, but just a regular stylus. Fun. It does cost a little bit, but you can try it out if you want. Anyway, the one that I'm going to use is called SketchBook from our friends at AutoDesk. Yes, that's right. The people who give us Revit and AutoCAD. They've done it again. They've given us a nice drawing app. Actually, what's really nice about it is this one, because you're a student, you can get it for free. The other apps all cost either a monthly or an annual fee, and that can be upwards of $20 or $30. Not that that's a huge amount when you're running an office, but when you're a student, it's a fair amount. Also, what I like about this app is that it runs on various devices, including your laptop computers. So obviously it's more fun to draw using a stylus, but if you want a little more power, you can use it. This individual subscription, by the way, is not necessary. Follow the link to the Autodesk student community website, educational community, and you can get this app for free, and a fully featured app. So, and just taking a look at it quickly here on my desktop, again, I'm going to jump to my iPad version momentarily, but just to show you, again, the features that most of these programs have, they have different kinds of pens that you can click on. I'll click on this and you'll see that there are all sorts of different pens. Some look like spray bottles, some look like markers, some look like an inking pen, and yes, it actually does say that. And they have hard and soft erasers. There's all sorts of interesting stuff. There are layers, and these layers, interestingly enough, are very similar to the layers that you'd see in Photoshop, where they have a number of features, including how opaque they are, but also their blending modes. You can add them, subtract them, and you can move them around in your list here. Then you have the ability to fill using colors. Again, I'm using my desktop to demonstrate this initially because the menus are nice and big. And anyway, and then there are all these other shapes that you can draw. One nice thing that this desktop app has that the others do not have is a perspective grid that allows you to draw lines that are going to vanishing points. In case you wanted to, say, draw an interior, but you don't actually have a space drawn, you can take advantage of these this perspective grid. So anyway, other than that, it does have these nice guide features which allow you to draw lines that are, say, parallel to each other just by moving the guide along, or by drawing a protractor and reshaping your protractor and drawing different lines that are curved that are also parallel to each other. And again, the others are probably fairly self-explanatory. Again, most of these, pretty much all of these, are going to have some sort of text option. There you go. And the text can be moved around and rotated, and you can even manipulate it and warp it and fun things like that. Except I don't have it selected. You can also use fill patterns to dump into objects. You can crop your view and all this sort of stuff. So anyway, these also, by the way, because the desktop app has all the full buttons, but it also has these kind of micro buttons down here. These allow you to quickly access some of the same features that are up here. Which type of brush do you want to use? Well, I could use the whole brushes palette. Some people prefer to have a minimal menu. What will happen when we switch to the iPad is that you'll see that they tend to focus on the smaller menus because you have a smaller screen. So here's the iPad interface. I'm going to make a new sketch here. I'm just going to use the screen resolution. I believe that's the maximum size of the iPad. And click Create, and it gives you a nice blank sheet. Yes, I'm discarding my current sketch. And what you'll see that the pencils are here on the left. You can just click on the color to see the color options, and then click on the pencil itself to start drawing. I'm using a stylus here to just kind of draw a random pattern. And there are all sorts of features about brushes, including basic features, which just have the general size, and opacity. But if you go with the more advanced features, this is great, especially if you're working on a tablet or with an iPad with an Apple Pencil. Apple Pen. You can actually control the pressure sensitivity. You can really get some nice lines with that. Anyway, all of you have your favorite drawing tools, so I would strongly encourage you to find one that you like. Pencils obviously are an awful lot of fun, but so is the spray can, or the flow airbrush, excuse me. Like the others, it has different options, and sometimes it's nice just to create a little shadow background in your drawings. So there are so many different pens that you can use that, and there's so many options that, again, I would go with what style you prefer. Sometimes I like to experiment with having kind of a blushy sort of background. I can draw it on the main layer that I was drawing the other objects on, or if you see here, I can create a new layer and put that blush kind of effect on that layer. And that's really nice if you want to, say, control the opacity of that layer or the color independently. So what I'm doing here, I can change the bottommost layer is a layer that is the color, background color layer. So I'm turning it, toggling it on and off by... So what I can do here, using the paint bucket, I can pick some colors, pick a color, and then just tap in areas that are completely bounded. In other words, there's a boundary around those areas, and see how they fill in. I can also create a blank layer, and I can paint over that entire layer, or I can drag that layer underneath the first layers, and you see how the objects show up on top of that background layer. So there's any number of ways that you can paint objects. Sometimes I'll paint just using a background layer. Sometimes I'll use painting. So what you see here is a guide that is built into the system, and it's basically a ruler, and I can drag the ruler with one finger. I can actually rotate the canvas using 2 fingers, or as you saw there, I can tap and drag to move the guide. This is an oval-shaped guide here that I'm using. And this is great when you want to use create some figures with parallel lines or with regular shapes. You don't really, in this application, have the ability to draw shapes quite as easily. There are a number of other drawing features. This is one that's kind of fun to play with. That's a symmetry feature. It allows you to draw along a central axis. The oval feature allows you to draw basically circles and ovals. And the same with rectangles. Now, the other thing that is great to do when we start our sketch, and I'm gonna do my sketch now using an image of my dog. Everybody say hi to Chelsea. Now, when you bring something in, it is selected. You see the selection editing tools above here. You can use 2 fingers to rotate or expand them to make it larger or smaller, and then click Done. You see how it comes in on its own layer, which I have dragged around. I'm going to lower the opacity. I'm using this as a layer, an underlay, to make my sketch. And I'll pick a pen and a style, and I'll just start drawing, abstracted shapes to represent my dog and her wonderful dogginess in a more abstracted way here. Give her some different objects. And again, you could use a pencil to freehand shapes. You can use any line weight you want. It's basically what would you do if you were drawing on a piece of paper. The reason we're doing this electronically is that it is so much easier to share these types of drawings when you've done them electronically. You're already kind of inside a workflow that is easier in a lot of ways than having paper. And also you can back it up in case you lose it, and you can email it to your client, or you can bring it into your photo editing software and apply some fun textures or whatever. Or just trace over it using something like Adobe Illustrator. So once you've finished your sketch, share the sketch by clicking the Home menu button. AirDrop is available for iPad and other Mac users, obviously, if you have Macs. If you don't, you can email it to yourself. It just sort of depends on what you have active in your system. I have Dropbox. I could also save it to Dropbox, or I could just download it, or I could even just print it. So let's take a look at this app on an iPhone. And the big difference is, of course, it's a smaller screen. So when you click on, say, the pencil tool, it fills the entire screen. Same with the colors, which is a little annoying, of course, but you only need to do that occasionally. And there is a preset button down in the center bottom of your screen. Anyway, even the layers menu also takes up an awful lot of space. Most of the tools are hidden under what look like some drafting tools. These are the same tools we saw in the other version. So here I'm drawing with a guide, just dragging with one finger to move it, 2 fingers to rotate. You can double tap it with a finger also to kind of reset it. So the functionality is basically the same. You can squeeze 2 fingers together to narrow or make the drawing area larger or smaller. Anyway, and then like we saw before, you can draw different shapes, ready-made shapes, ovals, and whatnot. And you can click the paint bucket, and you can fill things with different colors. In fact, if you long press on a color in your drawing, that will kind of eyedropper the color up, which does save a little bit of time. So anyway, and you can put in text, and obviously your phone has whatever text entering options that you normally would have, so you could speak to text, or I have a swipe feature. Anyway, and text becomes an object in your drawing Once you've created the text, you can't edit it anymore. So you can move it around using some of the editing tools, flip it around, rotate it, create some fun effects. Again, this is a very simple program, not the full power of something like Adobe Illustrator. Okay, so you finally got your beautiful sketch. Time to kind of start deconstructing your sketch. And the first step is really to just draw some arrows at the different features of your concept idea and look at it under these different conceptual kind of schemes or schema. Study the form, maybe there's something regular about the form, the balance, the harmony, the scale. Maybe the dog's belly is immense, or at least with my dog, I've always felt like her head is much smaller than her body would really accommodate. Anyway, that's my own poor dog's problem. Anyway, I look at each of the design elements and try to come up with ones that work in your project. And again, it's just a deconstruction. You're just looking for inspiration for your pattern. And I have very messy handwriting, and I'm left-handed and drag it on the screen. So even with a stylus, my handwriting is really atrocious. Frankly, with a pencil, it's atrocious. So I'll use a piece of text and just scale it down a little bit. And there you have it. You can deconstruct your sketch very quickly.